Hey guys, thank you all so much for coming. It's amazing to see all your lovely faces. I'm Lucy.
I'm Joya. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. It's so nice to see your faces, like Lucy said.
So we're a documentary directing duo. We have been making documentaries together for the last 5 or 6 years. We focus on environmental social justice stories and really believe in film and the power of film as an impact medium. So we do a lot around impact filmmaking, using our films as part of campaigns. And today we're going to just talk about our journey into the filmmaking world and as becoming filmmakers, and through that cover things like the ethics of filmmaking, finding funding, caring for yourself as filmmakers, and show you some clips of our films. And hopefully it will be really helpful and useful, or at least a little bit interesting. If at any point you have a comment or a question, please just put your hand up, shout out, heckle us, whatever. We want this to feel like a really mutual conversation rather than a presentation as such. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it.
So, are we going to start a bit with where we started?
Yeah.
So just to give you, I think people often ask us about how we found each other, how we started working together, because the people that you work with to make films, it's such a team. You have to pull so many talented people together. So we met at uni, which was really lucky, at LCC just down the road. But we're both from the countryside, not from London. And so the first film we ever made together was what's it called? That funding platform? GoFundMe.
It was Kickstarter.
Yeah. And that was really interesting because I would say we've funded films in every single different way, and that was a really good way to start as uni students. And that was our graduation film. And that's kind of where it all started. And since then, we've been making a series of films together, which we'll show you today, and just grown as filmmakers together.
Yeah, I think it was so lucky because we, like Joya says, we were both from the countryside. We both really had nature as a predominant thing in our lives. And we were both in London, and we spent the first year at uni together, but not talking to each other, because we looked like really similar people, and I always looked at Joy and thought, oh, she should probably be my friend, but we never bothered staying at uni long enough to actually talk to each other. And then Joya eventually reached out to me, and as soon as we met, we were like, oh, we're really on the same page. And I think it's really good to just have your eyes and your ears open for potential collaborators. And before that, I had always really struggled. I studied film at college, and I'd always really struggled with collaboration, and always found that my motivation levels, my interests were really different to other people's. And as soon as I met Joya, I was like, oh yeah. And so as soon as you find that person who, or any various people who you just click with, it's always just worth trying that relationship as a working relationship. And it doesn't matter if it's only for one project and then you move on, but just when you find your people, grab hold of them. So like I said, we both had nature and alternative living as one of our sort of main interests, and certainly documentary, because a lot of other people in our course were interested in fiction. So we had that bond, and we went to Scotland together and made a film called Away with the Land. Should we play a clip now? Yeah. We'll just play the intro of the film just to ease us all in.
you always feel, I think, that the land belongs to you. You feel it's what your parents, your grandparents and everybody else has worked for. That eventually is coming back to the people that worked and shaped the land.
So
That was Donald John,
yeah,
a Scottish crofter who lives a very remote life, as you can see. Amazing life.
Yeah, and it was really lucky that we chose to make that film whilst we were studying, because we weren't making it for like any kind of platform or anything. We were able to have the freedom to make it really slow and exactly how we wanted to make it, which was like reflected his lifestyle, which again was really slow and conscious. And we were like, fuck it, let's just leave that shot for like 3 minutes, it doesn't matter. And it was so nice, like having that freedom at uni to just be creative and have space. But it's not necessarily that you need to go to uni to have that creative freedom. It's more just like, for example, doing the Kickstarter to crowdfund that film proved to us that just whatever way you can, just make the work you want to make, just find funds however you can, like ask whoever you think might be interested. And that was definitely our first lesson in like just, you know, take whatever camera you can, whatever money you can, and just go and make the best thing that you can make.
How many of you guys in the room are students? Are you filmmaking students? Yeah. I think uni or MAs or that period can be like such an amazing privileged space to just really focus on the stories that you want to tell. I don't know if your unis give you funding or if you have to apply for it. Yeah. It's a good time to like you've got, you know, more time than you ever will before you're thrown into the hustle of working. So go for it.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about traveling?
Yeah, so a bit more about our journey, but we left uni and decided that we both speak Spanish, so we were like, we want to go to South America, go see the world. We've been at uni for 4 years. So we did this amazing trip, just the two of us, and I think the lesson that we learned in that was we went for 9 months to South America, is just go and see the world and like reflect and plant seeds for ideas and like observe. Because that trip then informed like the next 5 years of our storytelling, because of the things that the communities we met, the experiences that we had. Like maybe at that time we weren't aware, but we were essentially seeing the effects of the climate crisis on like the front lines in Colombia with ocean coastal communities. And it wasn't such a big conversation back then, but it meant that, yeah, these incredible seeds were planted, and we were then able to come back to the UK having had these experiences and then be like, right, what do we do with this information? Like, for example, we kind of realized how kind of male and white the surf industry is, and how there's no representation and no diversity, which would kind of create space for people to see themselves as a place in that sport. So that was because of a surf contest that we'd been to in Colombia, and we were like, this is amazing, like we've never seen surfing in this way before, like this needs to be put in a spotlight. So that then led us to do some research to find a story about Imanu Wilmot, who's a Jamaican surfer, and we made a film called Surf Girls Jamaica. So I hope that made sense, but basically what I'm trying to say is you never quite know where your inspiration is going to come from. So like go let yourself be inspired.
Yeah, and it's definitely about following following your heart, I guess, like following those things that you really truly and integrally, or like love with integrity. So like for us, ocean and surfing was like a large part of our lifestyle, and just nature and the environment. So we were, I guess, really observant and really switched on to finding stories within those places, and just traveling and being sponges and learning, and not going somewhere with like loads of presumptions, but just seeing what you can find and what people can teach you, I guess. Let's play a clip from Surf Girls Jamaica, and then we'll talk a bit about funding and some more technical parts of filmmaking.
There is nothing about mainstream media that is representative of surf culture here. I don't think they see the benefit of having a black or a woman of color on their ads. All you can do is keep doing what you're doing and hope that they can see the need to change, the need to be representative, the need to be diverse. Many black women are afraid of getting into the water because historically, black people were discouraged from entering the sea or even just learning to swim. And so it's important for them to have a role model. You want to make sure that you being present out there is going to inspire some other little girl of color who really wants to try surfing, and you're going to show her that she's not the only one who's interested in it.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of profound points that Imani made in that section, and there's a lot that we want to talk about in terms of that film and how we approached it and what we learned and the message that we were spreading. But while we're at this point of our journey, this was our first commissioned film. Yeah. So how did we get it funded?
This felt like a really big moment, actually. So we kind of saw, we don't need to tell the whole story because it's no. We saw this opportunity with Sheffield Doc Fest. Have you guys heard of Sheff Doc Fest? It's like the big doc festival in the UK. And some years they have these like small pictures. They haven't for 2 years because of COVID. But basically where you can apply to pitch, and maybe like 50 films would apply, and then 5 will do live pitches there. So it's kind of like you go to the pitches, you see people pitch their film, one person will get the funding, and they have loads of different types of pitches. So we applied to it and got it. We were so surprised. So then we had to go to Sheffield and pitch our film, and we'd never done any public speaking. No. We were so nervous. I couldn't tell if I was talking or if I was on the floor. Like, I was that nervous. I had no concept of my body being... And then we did the pitch, and weirdly, it kind of went okay, because we didn't get the commission, but we got like a side commission by the platform who were running the pitch. So the platform who are running the pitch are called Real Stories, and they're like a human-centered storytelling platform on YouTube. And what else is interesting? They're quite good people to know, good person to write down. The production company is called Little Dot Studios, and they kind of commission originals in-house. And they really believe in like fostering emerging talent. But some of their videos, like, it's a strange platform, isn't it? It's quite like TV, but it's quite online. But you don't always have to like prescribe completely to the aesthetics of that channel. You can like also try try to challenge like the kind of media that platform is commissioning.
Because at the end of the day, if a platform is like going to a big festival like Sheffield Doc Fest, it's probably because they want to like freshen up their content a little bit, and that's especially when they're asking for like young emerging filmmakers. They want to see what new stories are out there, what new voices are out there. So yeah, just definitely like think about, you know, for example, if you're going to a specific pitch, definitely like really check out the platform and what other content they make, but think about how you might be able to lead them to step outside the box a little bit. And it was really helpful for us in that we had been to Sheffield Doc Fest before just as punters, like as spectators. So we'd already seen like what a pitch looked like. And I know that there were some pitches here yesterday, which is really cool. But if you think that in the future you might be pitching films, then I definitely recommend just going to watch pitches if you can. And I think there are pitches at most documentary festivals. And it's just really helpful. It helps to give you a little bit of inspiration. And if we hadn't have done that, we probably both would have been on the floor. Because, like, yeah, I think just having that bit of knowledge helped us to be like, okay, if they can do it, we can do it. But again, we were really lucky to have each other.
Yeah, that's...
And obviously at that point that you're pitching a doc, you might already be working with a producer. So even if you're directing on your own or, then it's still nice to maybe, like, do the pitch with a producer or another team member. It just helps to, like, give you someone to bounce off, and if your throat goes dry and you're like, you can like look at them or nudge them and then they can step in. And so
so more about funding, I reckon. How do you find funding, which is obviously such a huge question? I think the world of, we're probably mostly talking about short form docs here more than like TV or like online little social content. But I believe loads in this realm of the power of observation. So I think look at like what films are being made and who's commissioning them. So whether that's like Guardian, Nowness, Real Stories, Netflix. Do they do short stuff?
Yeah, Netflix do shorts.
Basically all these different platforms, and just be like, what's their tone of voice? What are they commissioning? Like someone like Guardian is quite current affairsy. Nowness is all about like challenging video, new forms of video and new ways of feeling, and much more artistic and fashiony, and look at their strands, look at their interests. And basically, you have to think about your story and the story you want to tell, the way you want to tell it. And then think about how you can then send that to a commissioner and they feel it's the right fit for their platform and that you've actually really researched them, because they want to feel seen by you as much as you want to feel seen by them, because of the amount of pictures that they get, which is probably just completely wrong. And that must get a bit annoying for them. So yeah, just be a bit savvy, observational, see what's being commissioned, and always try and find out who the commissioners are of the platforms and try get their emails. So like any kind of event where there'll be commissioners present, go and try and find them and get their emails. The only reason that we kind of are where we are today is because of the commissioners that we know.
Yeah. And especially the commissioner of Surf Girls Jamaica, our first commissioner, because he worked for Real Stories. He's called Adam G. We should give you all his emails so you can all bombard him. But he is great because he's moved from every year he works with a different platform. So we've had many different commissions through him. So yeah, just keep those relationships. They can be quite annoying at some points, but it's worth gritting your teeth, because the next year around they give you an email and they're like, have you got any ideas? And you're like, oh, thank God I didn't tell him to fuck off.
Yeah. That's the kind of relationship that I think like is really needed. You know, like a commissioner is living their life and moving from contract to contract and commissioning films for different platforms. And as they move, if they enjoy making work with you, you move with them. And that's really important because it keeps giving you opportunity and funding to tell the stories that you want to tell. And there's someone who's kind of got your back. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I feel like we're all quite British and never say like, you know, well, how much money have you got? But you have to say to commissioners, like, you know, how much does The Guardian commission a doc for? How much does Real Stories pay for a doc? And then there's original commissions, but then they also acquire content, all these platforms. So they would like buy a film that's already been made. Acquisition is really badly paid. So always try and get your films originally commissioned if you can, if that makes sense. So don't make them and then try and sell them to someone. Try get them commissioned before you've made it. Yeah.
I think that's probably like obviously keep any questions about funding in your mind and we can come back to it at the end.
I guess approaching funding, like what do you need if, so let's say we're going to approach a commissioner, like what do you send them in an email? And I think you have to remember people really don't have a lot of time. So you want to send like a log line, your treatment, make it quite concise, not like, you know, 40 pages of sprawling information. And kind of confirm that you have access to your contributors and like vaguely that you have some kind of like mission for where you want it to end up or like a date that you want to make it by. Or if you're feeling really secretive, don't send the treatment, just send the log line. And most of the time people reply if they can.
Yeah, definitely. Remember that like you're giving them something. It's a two-way. It's a tango, you know. That you're not like, please hail funding commissioner. Like you're also offering them something really valuable. So just keep your self-value high when you apply for funding. And then once you found your story, you have funding, where next? I guess it really depends on what film you're making. But coming back to Surf Girls Jamaica, that was a really amazing, interesting process for us because it was the first film that we made like on the other side of the world with a community that we weren't a part of. And it was something that we were really passionate about, making this film that challenged racism and representation in the surf industry. And following Imani Wilmot, who is running an amazing program helping women from Kingston and the surrounding areas to create a sisterhood and a nurturing space for them to experience the ocean and maybe even learn how to surf. So we were in contact with Imani for about 6 months before we went over to Jamaica. And again, that was very much a process of like just listening. And luckily she was a filmmaker as well, so that was our entrance into really understanding collaboration and how you collaborate with your protagonist rather than extract their story, so they feel that they are telling their story with you rather than you're taking their story. So that's really important. And that doesn't matter whether you are telling a story about someone that's not necessarily from the same cultural background from you, but it's also, it stands true for anyone you make a film about. And this is especially important in documentary because the origins of documentary sort of follow the patterns of like the way the world has gone in the last however many hundred years, and that it kind of started as quite a colonialist thing. White people going to countries in the global south and all over the place and extracting stories for their own like gain, I guess, either like reputation, or like even monetary gain. And that's been perpetuated for years up until this point. And now I feel like only now in the last few years is it really being challenged, and are we really talking about the need for
Even classic journalism is quite extractive as well.
Definitely, yeah. And now I feel like, we're finally really aware of the need for equity in filmmaking and storytelling. And we definitely wanted our films to be able to contribute to a much fairer and nurturing storytelling world. But obviously, we were still two white women going to Jamaica to tell a black woman's story. So we had to be very aware of our position going to that country and telling that story and being just really empathic and understanding and not having any really strong presumptions and not putting ourselves on them. And so how did we do that? Do you want to talk a bit about?
Yeah, I think we can bring this out into a more like general, not so focused on this exact film afterwards, but we were commissioned to make the film, and instead of going, for a week or two to make the film, we decided to go for a month, and we didn't start filming for about 7 days. And then we filmed for about 2 weeks straight. And the reason is because we just really wanted to build a foundational friendship based on like who we are as people, not with our cameras in our hand, with Imani and lots of the women featured in the film. And that's really fundamental because like a camera is like an inherently extractive thing. Like we're all image makers, so to us it's really normal to like snap, snap, snap away. But some people still find documenting them extractive, like you're taking someone's image. And so it's much, in our experience, it's much better just to be, who you are as a person and bring the camera into it when it feels right. And obviously it's a longer process, but it's much more ethical. And I think in the end you build lifelong relationships and you make, incredible collaborative films together where what you see on screen mirrors what happened behind the camera. What else? Ethics.
Yeah, so part of that comes back to, even though it's very likely that on a documentary budget it's going to be pretty limited, but as much as you can, try and prioritize leaving space to film in a considered way, kind of like Joya says, spend time making friendships before you pick the cameras up, but also even throughout the filmmaking process, you really want to give yourself time and space to reflect on what the story actually is, what you've captured already, what you might want to capture as you continue to go on. Because even though this is documentary and we're capturing real life, you're always still going to be capturing it from a particular angle or wanting to focus on certain things. So it's just, when you have a really rushed film production process, you end up just like skipping over things and getting quite hasty. And as much as you can, just try and slow down and film in a considered way.
And working with local crews is such a huge part of if you're filming in another place that's not your own, because they will set up like a precedent and inform you, and they're such a integral part when you're somewhere. Also economically, employing local filmmakers and building like a global network of brilliant filmmakers across the world and having those global connections is so important, which we have been able to do in quite a few places because we've worked in Jamaica and Colombia with amazingly talented filmmakers.
Yeah.
Paying
contributors can be an amazing thing if you can allow a budget for that, because the film is theirs as much as it is yours. So obviously you need to survive as a filmmaker, but they're obviously always going to be giving a similar amount of time to the project as you are. So if you can do that, that doesn't take away from the document. It doesn't make it not a documentary because you've paid them. You're just offering them a thank you. And then, this brings us back to really nicely our next point, which is impact filmmaking. So do as much as you can. Do more than just making a film. And that's, brings us on to impact filmmaking.
Yeah. So I think that for us, that's always come from, like, a film can say so much, but we want the film to be the tool that creates action. And we were going to talk about this at the beginning, but I think stories are such a potent, incredible tool for, like, reimagining what we want the world to look like. And they define everything. You know, all day long we're bombarded with things on our phone, billboards, like, that's all storytelling. And I think we have to, like, choose what stories we want to see in the world. And the only way to do that is to make them yourself. So impact is about what follows on beyond the film. A film can kind of become its own entity, can't it? Like, it lives beyond you. And like, people always write to us and want to screen films all over the world, and we're like, go on film, do your thing, like, woo, out in the world, because they become their own people, and what am I trying to say? Something about
the film just picks up its own momentum, basically, and especially if you do the right amount of work at the right time. Obviously, wanting to make a film as part of an impact campaign is kind of a thing that you think about at the beginning, because it does affect the way that you make the film. For example, like that scene, the clip that we showed you, we went through various different versions of that scene, one without the voiceover and just like having a sort of ethereal surfing scene, and then we kind of recognized that was actually a really powerful moment to like hit home the message of the film. Just a few quick things about impact filmmaking. It's about creating conversation, and that's one of the most powerful things you can do. Often important subjects and messages are basically carried through conversation and word of mouth, and that's how the film kind of has its own momentum. So how can you create conversation? You think about what your message and your agenda is, and you basically use the film to spread that message. I think a lot of it can be done through having amazing events and screening the film, and making sure every time you screen the film you include a Q&A or a discussion afterwards, so that it gives people space to really interact with the film and the subject. You can create online spaces where people can connect to the film and connect to the community. You can fundraise, which is also really amazing. For example, here we raise funds for Surf Girls Jamaica, which is the sort of ocean therapy group. And even though it sounds like a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, and often the budget doesn't cover the impact side of it, so you're doing a lot of it unpaid, for us, it is the main motivation. It's the thing that we feel really justifies our work, and the thing that keeps us going. And it's so soul nourishing when you see that your film has been able to have a positive impact on people's real lives. You know, it's not only allowed someone in the audience to feel something, but it's also changed people's lives positively. And it can have an impact in so many different ways, you know, like you can raise money for the people you're making the story with, but it can also create conversation and change cultures. And for example, like with Surf Girls Jamaica, we really felt that the film became part of a movement in the surf industry where it was really trying to be more fair with its representation, and it was amazing to see the film be a tool as part of that. What more?
Well, we've got a few more points just before we wrap up, but I have a feeling you guys might bring them up in the Q&A, so we could just launch straight into the Q&A, because it'd be great to hear from you about any questions. And then we can finish off with some very wise advice. No.
Yeah.
I guess there's a roaming mic. Maybe if any questions about, well, anything, but maybe like it could be interviewing or the technical side of it, kit, building narratives.
Hello, thank you for your time. It's been really interesting. I wanted to know, just in terms of the films that you're making, were most of them, like, what were the lengths that you've been making these films? Are they short films, are they feature films, or a mix of both?
Hello. So they are all shorts. Our first film was 5 minutes. Our second film was 20 minutes. Our third film was 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So that kind of length. Anywhere between 5 to 25. And definitely the longer side of that is kind of harder to find at home, online. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Hi. I'm just wondering, do you self-shoot? Do you film yourselves, or did you start that way and now you have more of a camera crew with you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That kind of comes back to the thing we were saying at the beginning, which is like, you know, it can be quite overwhelming when you see how much amazing technology there is out there and how complicated some people's setups are and stuff. But we started self-shooting using a really small, a Sony A7S, which is like a tiny DSLR or mirrorless SLR, and it's an amazing camera. And the films that we made with that have screened in cinemas and like not really necessarily looked any different in quality, you know. And a lot of people say that's what they like about our work, is the fact that it like adds to the humility of it, because it's not super shiny, it's not super high definition, and it was handheld, and you can see me going like, and I think that, I think that it can, like, just if you want to make a film and you can't afford loads of kit or to work with a DOP, just like go and make it and film it yourself on whatever you can. But now that we are getting slightly bigger budgets, we are experimenting with working with DOPs, and that is also really amazing and really fulfilling, because they obviously have trained and they've built up this amazing skill, and you can talk to them about the way that you want something to look, and they can make that happen, and like that's why collaboration is beautiful, and it allows you to really put time and energy into the directing side of it and the narrative. So it really depends on your project and what you want it to be like. But even still, when you're working with a DOP, I think it can be really good to remind them that, like, you know, this is a documentary, it is quite an intimate setting, and big camera setups can be quite off-putting. So it's always about finding that balance between what's going to not make the protagonist and people feel a bit too uncomfortable, and but then what is actually going to look good and create the kind of aesthetic you want. So it's definitely all about finding that balance. But yeah, however you can make it, just do it. Thanks for the good question.
Hi. I just wondered how you went about, like, initially approaching subjects, and in terms of like persuading them to be on camera and to tell their stories, and what you can offer them as filmmakers.
So that was something, we were going to talk about a bit, and it's obviously really a case-by-case thing, depending on the kind of vulnerability and the stakes of the subject. I think it's really good to feel like, you know, it's a collaboration and that person really wants to tell their story, your subject, and they really want to do this film with you. You kind of need that from someone, because you can't really, you know, put loads of effort into making a film and it all go wrong. So I think it's good to be in agreement from the start, like, we're doing this, we're in this together. And then in terms of someone who maybe never thought they were going to have a film made about them, and you are going to speak to them about it, and you're like, so, like, how about it? Let's make a film. I think what it takes is just, like, really putting yourself in their shoes and trying to say to them, like, you know, this is how it could be, this is the size of the crew, like, this is how many hours a day we'll need you. And it's a delicate thing, like, it's weird, you know, that it's filmmakers' jobs to invite themselves into people's lives, but I think it's just a case-by-case thing, and be, like, really vulnerable yourself, and know that you're kind of, like, essentially have bulldozed your way into someone's life, and, like, that's a very tentative relationship. What else would you say about that?
Yeah, I think, again, spending time with them outside of the world of, like, making a film with them is the most important thing. That allows that
building
relationship.
A friendship.
Yeah, because, like, exactly, because and also, obviously, you're not going to make a film about someone that doesn't want you to make a film about them. Like, they have to want to do it. But there definitely is that, like, I think it's just about being as informative as possible, and being like, this is how it's going to work, and, you know, this is what the filmmaking process looks like, and this is what will happen to your story when it's online. And it's just making sure every step along the way you remind them, like, we're not going to publicize anything you don't want us to publicize, and just making them feel like they really have a mobilized voice throughout the whole production. Amazing.
Hi. I had a question as well. It's very similar. Firstly, just want to say thank you for everything. My question was sort of how you find the people to start with and approach them, and if it's someone you've never met before, how you kind of initiate things at the beginning, and if it's sort of just kind of cold calling effectively.
It's really dependent, isn't it? Because, like, and we could maybe play another clip after this question, but with Surf Girls Jamaica, it was like I found Imani's story online, actually, and then I just emailed her, and she just got back to me. So always just send an email, you know. It's like, sometimes people might not have time to reply, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't for a couple of years, and then they suddenly get back to you. And then from that moment, it's always really good to get on a call if you can, or obviously meet up in person. But just so they get a feel for who you are.
And I think the first email or, like, message that you're going to send someone, I think, don't say, like, you know, we want to make a half-an-hour film about you. Or, like, just be like, hey, can we just have a chat? Like, I'm really interested by what you're doing. I'm a filmmaker. Like, be aware that you're kind of pushing yourself into someone's life with a camera, potentially, and how that would feel if you were in their shoes, you know?
Yeah, and then other times, you know, and we now are kind of looking a bit closer to home for our stories, especially since lockdown and COVID, and everyone's worlds have changed a little bit since then. And I think we are now looking at a slightly different style or looking at different stories, because we've realised the importance maybe of telling stories that are closer to home and not travelling to the other side of the world. And so when you do that, it's amazing, because you can actually go and meet them in person. And in fact, maybe we should just play Eve, a clip from Eve, because our latest documentary, Eve, she was a young girl living in an off-grid community, and Joya had friends that had lived in the community, and they took us to visit, and we were able to really actually experience that place in reality and find inspiration from that. And it was a couple of hours away from where we lived, and that was amazing because then you can actually build a relationship in a very natural way.
But she was a 7-year-old child when we started.
She was literally like,
making
"Oh,
the
make
film.
a film about me." Yeah.
So it's like, in terms of kind of, what's the word? When you agree to do something, she couldn't really agree to do it. So we built a friendship with her parents, and it was like an agreement that we would film in the wider community, film the family, and film her, and have this really like personal lens into their life. And the family we kind of just agreed with them that we would do that, and they never. We turned the camera off a few times. I think you have to know when to turn the camera off. Like when, I mean, most doc filmmakers wouldn't say that. They would say like, never turn the camera off. But that's kind of a line that you have to find in yourself as well. Should we play a clip from Eve?
Yeah, it's the last one.
Come on, buddy, don't die. People keep killing them by putting poisonous stuff on the plants. I'm helping it by putting sugar and water. I think it's gonna survive. We are now in the open day. Look at this. Say hello. Mouth dribbling cider.
That's Eve, everybody. How old is she now? 12?
Yeah. Wow. She's like a proper little... Now, well, even back then she talked a lot about boyfriends, but now she talks about boyfriends even more.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about making a film about her. We know all about her dating schedule all the time.
But like that's been amazing because, you know, with films that we've made abroad, we have been able to keep up a relationship, but it's definitely been a lot more complicated. And naturally, like now you just send an email every couple of months maybe. But with Eve, we feel still very much involved in her life, and that has made the whole holistic side of filmmaking feels so much fuller and organic in the way that that definitely felt like it wasn't extractive. It felt like this is a relationship for life now. And yeah, I think, and also obviously we were filming off grid, where at a community where they haven't burnt fossil fuels for 25 years, and they've all moved there to leave the sort of like rat race of normal society. And so that process anyway taught us even more the benefits of a more considered and conscious approach to filmmaking.
Which ties into the kit thing, actually, a bit. Your question about what kit to use and this shoot. So the houses that this off-grid community live in are on a hill, and the hill is like a very big hill. Like, it takes 15 minutes to walk up it, and it's like very steep. So we had to shoot on really small cameras because it was just so heavy. Like, we'd hurt ourselves otherwise. So we'd carry the kit up the hill and use small equipment and charge the batteries down at the local pub because they have solar energy and they needed the solar energy for the 25 people that live in the community. So this film was a really amazing insight in, like, when there's constraints to a shoot, instead of being like, you know, oh, well, we're going to hire a generator and burn fossil fuels, which obviously we never would have been allowed to do. But we are like, we'll just go smaller, we'll use less kit, we'll keep it simple. So leaning into that was really nice. And what that meant was we became really interested in looking at the filmmaking process through like a carbon conscious lens. So kind of how many times we went to the community to film, how we traveled there, what kit we filmed on, whether it was, you know, secondhand, rented, not bought new, using a kind of pre-charged pack to charge our batteries once with a limited amount of supply, eating all the food from the local community. What other things did we do? All these, like, mitigating your impact so that your film is not only about an environmental subject, but the process was also prioritizing kind of treading lightly.
Yeah, so that was our journey into a greener filmmaking process. And it was really lucky in that Doc Society commissioned that film. They're an amazing organisation. For any of you looking for documentary funding or even just support or what events might be going on, check out Doc Society. Amazing team, mainly run by women. And basically we sort of mentioned in the pitch, like, oh, we'd like to make this film carbon neutral, but didn't really know what that meant. And Hannah, the woman who was our like contact at Doc Society, reached out to us, and she was like, if you want to do this seriously, like, we'd like you to use Eve as a case study and look at carbon neutral documentary filmmaking. So via that process, we ended up working with our friend as a sustainable production manager, and he created a log of each time we filmed and the production process and what impact we had throughout the whole production. And that's right up until like the editing distribution process. And at the end, calculated how much of a carbon footprint we had in order for us to then offset it. So Eve was one of the first carbon neutral short documentaries, and we've been able to work with Doc Society to make what they have called the Green Documentary Protocol List, or Green Filmmaking Protocol List, which any of you can go on. It's a public document, and it just, you don't have to make your film carbon neutral, but you might be interested in looking at what you can do to help have slightly less impact with your filmmaking. And that document's a really amazing way of just, from the beginning of the process, thinking, what might I be able to do here to make this film have less impact on the earth? And again, that sort of feeds back into, I guess, what our last sort of points will be, which is about filmmaking, the holistic side of filmmaking and caring for yourself as a filmmaker. I feel like we could play the Dive Tea clip because that actually does sort of allude to that.
Does it?
Yeah, because it's quite an emotional moment, wasn't it? And it's sort of...
Oh, yeah, that would... So we've got 5 minutes left.
Maybe we should just...
Should we... Do you want us to play a clip and talk about self-care, or should we answer any more questions? Is there any more questions?
Does anyone have any more pressing questions? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Hiya, sorry, I've got a bit of a blocked nose, so my voice is a bit croaky today. I was going to say, so I mainly work within theatre and like direct theatre work, but I'm interested in sort of verging into documentary making and filmmaking. And I wanted to ask, because I know you both said that you studied, I don't know if your degree was in filmmaking purely, but if you haven't sort of studied that, do you have any tips on like how to sort of start developing your craft in sort of documentary making, or where to start or to go into that?
Did you say you're a theatre?
Yeah, theatre director. Yeah.
Well, that's a very good start. It's all storytelling, right? And trying to create a feeling and make someone feel something, to move something in them, in the audience. I think they're all just different tools, you know, whether it's like writing or photography or filmmaking. So you've got the skill set in a way. It's just maybe finding people to collaborate with who can help you like create your vision. I guess, would you want to do directing?
Yeah, directing the documentary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you need to find a producer, a camera person, and yeah, collaborate, because you kind of do need other people to make films. I mean, the alternative is kind of getting a camera yourself and self-shooting, but some people might find that a bit intimidating.
But definitely believe in yourself, and that's the main thing, you know, like you obviously have a skill for storytelling, and that is one of the hardest parts. And once you have that sort of naturally inside of you, and just that ability to let go and be a bit fearless and just, you know, find a narrative in the everyday, then that's an amazing place to start. And all the logistical side of things, you can learn that. But definitely just dragging other people to help you, yeah, and teach you and just ask questions. And I think most, especially in the like more, you know, in this realm, for example, in this community of like female filmmakers, people want to help for sure. Like we're definitely not precious about our information. Like we can all work together to expand and improve, and yeah. So, but good luck.
Thank you.
All right, there's someone else.
Hello. I was just wondering a bit about the editing process, and like I guess at the early stages before you even started filming, how much of an idea about what the edits are going to look like have you got, and if none, then when do you start thinking about it?
I think that can be quite project specific, and the type of doc that you want to make. For example, with Eve, we were following very much an unfolding story because we weren't really sure what was going to happen, and we followed it over the course of like a year and a half, her life. So we had a lot of footage. So we ended up finding our story in the edit, which is definitely the much longer kind of horrendous version, than knowing what film you want to make and being quite strict about what you film, which will be the bare bones of your story. And probably the latter being the organized one, where you know what you want to film, is better. But you don't always have that control, because maybe your story is about like more nuanced observation, and you only get those moments from kind of a rolling camera.
Yeah, and if you guys end up looking at our work when we finish. So Dive Tierra Bomba, which is like the last film that we probably won't play, but that was, as opposed to Eve, a film where we like quite heavily scripted it, because we were going out to Colombia for a shorter amount of time, and we sort of knew we had a very strong idea of the best way to tell that story might be. And so there is still scope within documentary to almost create scenes. It's not about telling people what to say, but it's just about like asking, can we have a meeting in the kitchen with these people, and then just getting them off on a conversation and then starting rolling. So it's like, again, you can in a way shape what scenes are going to happen, and that definitely helps in the edit, because you already have an idea of the chronological order that things might come, and then it means that you have a bit of freedom in the edit to create some like fun, sort of creative, more abstract bits in between. Whereas when you're finding your story in the edit, it's like all about like, oh my god, where's it gonna go and how.
You lose perspective as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's good to have a kind of script breakdown of what you want your film to be, a beginning, middle, and end, like at the start, because by the time you're in the edit, you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore, or like what this story is. So definitely have a guide. I often think that moment when you have like found your story and you're researching it is the most important moment to remember what questions you're asking yourself, because those are the questions that like any person who then is going to go and watch that film will be asking as well, if that makes sense. So you let your immediate curiosity and research shape the way that you craft your film.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Is there any other questions?
Oh,
one more.
Just shout. It depends, and they'll normally like outline it in the normally pitches and commissions and grants have like a sort of page at the beginning that says like, we want this, this and this from you. They often do ask for like budgets and schedules. They definitely want to see, it doesn't have to be final, but they definitely want to see like where their money's going to go, and they want to know how you're going to make the film. So it definitely does help to have a producer on board from the beginning. We have self-produced a lot, but we definitely would rather not to. It's just like one of those things that like directing and producing doesn't... A lot of people do it, and like it is good to be able to do it because it means you're self-sustainable, but it's not... Directing and producing don't necessarily like support each other, because it's like producing, you're having to think very logically and you're having to like use your organizational brain, and then with directing you're really trying to let your like creative juices flowing. So it's really, really cool to find a good producer and make a good relationship with them, and then they can, crack on with the more like budgety stuff, and you can focus on writing treatment and figuring out what your story is. But yeah, like I said, the first couple of films we made, we did everything. So don't feel like if you do that, your idea or your pitch is any less. It's just that as you go on, it's definitely nice having a producer. Yeah.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to have to wrap up now. So if you have any last comments, words of wisdom to bring to the audience.
I think, especially as women, just back yourself so hard, because like everyone's like, riddled with self-doubt in moments and not in other moments, but just really believe in yourself and your visions, because you basically spend your whole career trying to convince people to believe in your vision. So if you don't believe in yourself, then no one's going to believe in you. And also just remember that there's so many different ways to tell stories and make films, and that you don't have to like conform to a way of storytelling that you've seen other people make films. Like, there's so many ways to communicate emotions, and really at the end of the day, the only language is the language of that specific film. So like, it could have no words, no subtitles, or it could have only words and subtitles and be black the whole way through, you know. It's completely up to you how you choose to express yourself through this medium. But I think we all tend to get caught up in seeing what other people are making. Like, maybe we should make it like that, maybe we should do it like that. But just do exactly what you want. There's no limits or boundaries.
And if anyone asks, say, we gave you permission to do that.
We gave you permission.
Do whatever you want. Yeah, exactly. I listened to a really good podcast with a Dr. Rangan Chatterjee the other day, and he was talking about what happiness really is, and he said that two main parts of happiness is authenticity and integrity. And I think that is a really nice reflection in filmmaking as well. It's like, just if you're always acting with authenticity and integrity of who you really are, you'll always feel proud of what you make, no matter what anyone else thinks. And freelancing and filmmaking is definitely a journey. So don't feel like you need to hit these high achieving goals really quickly in order to feel valued as a filmmaker or successful. Allow yourself to take time off. You know, making a film is really challenging and takes a lot of energy out of you. And after we make every film, we always give ourselves like a fair few months to go and do something else and just hang out and just give ourselves a break, because at the end of the day, those moments that you are present for in your real life always come back and make the films you make better anyway. So just look after yourself, look after the people you make films about, and just good luck. And we always would love to be able to answer everyone's questions and emails, but and often we can't because we're doing our sort of self-care. But please, if you do have questions specifically for us beyond this talk, definitely drop us a line on Instagram or email, and we will do as much as we can to get back to you. But thank you so much for coming. I hope you all found that helpful, or whatever, got something out of it. But we're really grateful, so thank you.
Thank you, guys. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you so much.